Hey guys, tonight we crack open something ancient, misunderstood, and possibly dangerous if you're not careful. The Beatitudes. You've probably heard them in some dusty sermon or printed in gilded type on a church wall, right? But tonight, we're not tiptoeing through those flowery verses. Nope, you're stepping barefoot into the deep, confusing terrain of paradoxes, where blessings wear disguises and comfort comes dressed like a thunderstorm. But tonight, we're not tiptoeing through those flowery verses. Nope. You're stepping barefoot into the deep, confusing terrain of paradoxes, where blessings wear disguises and comfort comes dressed like a thunderstorm. You're sitting there, lights dim, phone screen warm in your hand. Maybe your cat's asleep on your chest, or maybe you're alone, scrolling yourself to sleep. Either way, brace for this. The first Beatitude doesn't tell you to do anything. It just drops a cryptic bomb. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Poor in spirit. You probably won't survive this if you're clinging too tightly to your curated identity. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with your location and local time. I love seeing where this sleepy little community is tuning in from. And hey, drop a comment with your location and local time. I love seeing where my little community is tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into today's journey together. Number 1. Poor in spirit. Poorly spirited. You trudge up a dusty Galilean hill. The air's dry, and your sandals keep slipping on loose rock. Jesus sits, and the crowd hushes. Then he says it, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." You pause. Did he mean actual beggars? Poor in spirit is the moment you realize you don't have the answers. It's spiritual bankruptcy. No savings, no fallback plan. You stare into the universe and mutter, "I have nothing." And instead of collapsing, the sky opens. You don't earn this kingdom. You're just so empty. There's finally room for it. Historians still argue whether Jesus was referencing a specific group here. Maybe the Essenes, desert dwellers who rejected materialism, or maybe even the Anawim, the Hebrew term for humble ones crushed by injustice. Either way, being poor in spirit was not trending. You weren't admired. You were pitied. Fast forward to today. Instagram says you should hustle, affirm yourself, manifest abundance. Meanwhile, Jesus whispers, "Blessed are those who've run out of spiritual gas." That's weirdly comforting. You can admit you're tired of pretending to be fine. Your lack, it qualifies you. Weird historical detour. Did you know that in the 1300s, some mystics thought poverty of spirit meant literal silence? They'd go years without speaking to discipline their ego. Others went even weirder. One guy in Syria wore chains to weigh himself down physically, to match his spiritual humility. Not recommended. But you get the idea. This beatitude isn't about self-pity. It's about spiritual honesty. Not recommended. But you get the idea. This beatitude isn't about self-pity. Now picture yourself again. You're not strutting into heaven with gold stars and merit badges. You're crawling, muttering, "I can't do this alone." And heaven doesn't just meet you, it belongs to you, like it's always been yours, waiting for you to stop pretending. And heaven doesn't just meet you, it belongs to you. Still, modern minds hate this idea. You've been taught to level up, not empty out. But this beatitude flips that. If you're full of self, you have no space for grace. But when you're hollowed by heartbreak, failure, or doubt, something divine pours in. Not flashy, not loud, just present, like a quiet presence in the dark. And just when you think this is all sad and floaty, remember this beatitude starts and ends with power. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. That's not a participation trophy. That's access. That's keys. That's backstage. You lose everything and gain the only thing that matters. That's not a participation trophy. That's access. That's keys. That's backstage. You lose everything and gain the only thing that matters. So you, sitting there at 2:14 a.m. wondering what you even believe anymore. You're exactly who this was for. Number 2. Mourners who inherit comfort. You're still on that hillside. Your legs stiff. Maybe your spirit too. But just as you think you've processed the whole poor in spirit paradox, Jesus drops the next line, and it hits like a whisper that somehow shouts, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." Oh, great. Mourning. Just what you wanted tonight. You squint up at the sky, half expecting an explanation to fall out of a cloud. Mourn. Like cry into your pillow. Like grief as a path to blessing. This isn't a self-help podcast. Remember, it's a divine upside-down kingdom where pain doesn't just exist. It becomes sacred, not just accepted, but blessed. You've mourned before. Everyone has. Maybe it was when your pet died. Maybe when you got ghosted after opening up too much. Or maybe it was the silent mourning that comes from waking up every day with that unshakable emptiness in your chest, the one you can't name, but definitely feel. Now here's the twist. Jesus isn't just talking about personal loss. The word he uses in Greek, pentheo, is deep grief, the kind that tears your soul open. This is the stuff of prophets mourning injustice, of wailing mothers in ancient laments. It's not pretty. Not poetic. It's ugly crying on the bathroom floor at 1 a.m. because the world broke and so did you. Historians still argue whether this beatitude was aimed more at communal sorrow, Israel weeping under Roman oppression, or whether it was a call to inner transformation, mourning the distance between you and the divine. Either way, it wasn't about feeling your feelings as much as letting those feelings transform you. Because the mourning here isn't passive, it isn't performative. It's sacred discomfort. It's the ache that keeps your heart tender in a world trying to numb it with notifications and noise. Mourning means you care, deeply, and in caring, you're exposed but also opened. Comfort doesn't come wrapped in cliches here. It's not the everything happens for a reason kind of line people mutter awkwardly at funerals. The comfort Jesus is talking about is parakaleo, to be called near. Literally, to have someone come close and stay. So when you mourn, you don't get an answer. You get presence. Now here's your fringe fact for the night. There's a tiny sect in medieval Spain that believed crying during prayer was a sign you were truly blessed. So they trained themselves. Yes, trained to weep as they read scripture. They'd cut onions or slap themselves gently to get the tears going. A little dramatic? Maybe. But they knew something we forget. Sorrow isn't weakness. It's sensitivity, and sensitivity might be the last doorway to something real. And while we're at it, do you remember the last time you saw someone truly cry? Not a single tear on a red carpet. I mean shoulder-shaking, breath-stealing sorrow. Did it make you uncomfortable? That's natural. But it also probably made you want to reach out. That's what mourning does. It connects. It says you're not the only one broken. So why does mourning get comforted? Because it's honest. Because it's raw. And because it's in the wreckage that something divine draws near. Not to fix you. Not to fast forward your grief. But to sit beside you. To whisper, "I know." And maybe, just maybe, comfort is less about wiping away your tears and more about someone holding the box of tissues while you fall apart. So you, with the heavy heart, and the tired eyes, and the playlist full of sad songs, you're not disqualified. You're invited. You're seen. And the comfort, it's not the absence of pain, it's the presence of love in the middle of it. Number 3. The meek are not weak. You shift on that hillside. The wind's picking up now, carrying grains of dust that sting a little when they hit your skin. And just as you think maybe this next part will finally offer something soft and manageable, Jesus says, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." Oh, come on. Meek? You weren't expecting that. Maybe bold, courageous, or even slightly sarcastic. But meek? You've been trained your whole life to associate meekness with being a pushover, a doormat, someone who apologizes for existing and thanks people for walking over them. Meek. It sounds like the opposite of a LinkedIn endorsement. But here's the thing. You've been lied to by pop culture. Meekness is not weakness. It's controlled strength. Like holding back, even when you could crush. Think of a martial artist who could kick your ribs into splinters, but chooses to bow instead. In the original Greek, the word Jesus uses is praurus. This word was used to describe war horses, yes, literal trained battle horses, who were powerful, wild, and strong, but had been disciplined enough to respond to the rider's touch. That's not weak. That's terrifying power under calm command. Historians still argue whether Jesus was channeling Psalm 37 here, a Hebrew scripture that also says the meek will inherit the land. Some think he was referencing the oppressed Jews living under Roman rule, reminding them not to rise with violence, but with faith-filled restraint. Others believe this was a straight-up insult to the zealots, the violent resistance fighters. Either way, it was radical. Now think of it. You inherit the earth, not by conquest, not by domination, but by restraint. It's the long game, the opposite of our impulse-driven age. You don't win by shouting the loudest on social media or humiliating your enemies with snarky memes. You win by staying grounded when everything pushes you to lash out. Fringe side note. In the 1600s, some European philosophers used to debate whether true meekness was a form of inner nobility or if it was just the church's way of keeping peasants submissive. One guy even claimed meekness was a spell used to tame the poor. Dark, right? And yet here we are, still trying to figure out what it actually means. Let's be clear. Meek people aren't spineless. They don't run from conflict. They just don't lead with ego. They don't bark orders or need to be the loudest in the room. They speak last. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they're busy listening. And here's where it gets wild. Jesus says these are the ones who will inherit the earth. Not the billionaires, not the empire builders. The meek. Imagine that. You walk through life with quiet strength, and instead of grabbing power, you get handed something greater, the entire earth. And not in a corporate ownership way, in a you belong here way, in a you are trusted with this way. You, with the soft voice and the stubborn kindness. You, who forgives quietly and stands your ground gently. You are what this world needs and will one day receive. And maybe that's the most dangerous kind of strength, the one that doesn't need to prove itself. So if you've ever been told you're too sensitive or too soft, remember this. Jesus doesn't say toughness inherits the earth. He says meekness does. You carry peace like a seed in your pocket. You walk through fire without shouting about the burn. And maybe, just maybe, you're the one this earth has been waiting for all along. Number 4, starving for righteousness. Your body's tired now. The crowd has settled into a lull, some leaning on elbows, others blinking up at the clouds as if hoping for a break. But Jesus doesn't slow down. He just leans forward and delivers the next twist of the knife. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Hunger and thirst. You flinch a little. That's not a craving. That's survival language. You know the kind, when your stomach growls so loud you pretend you didn't hear it. When your throat's dry and every swallow feels like gravel. That's the kind of urgency Jesus is pointing to. And not for food or water, but for righteousness. You think about that word, righteousness, and immediately your brain glitches. Is it morality? Is it justice? Is it being right? Honestly, it sounds like something people weaponize in Facebook comment wars. But hold on. In the language of the time, dikaiosune in Greek, righteousness meant something deeper. It was rightness, in the sense of cosmic balance. Justice in relationship, in systems, in self. It's the aching desire to see the world set right, inside and out. So when you hunger and thirst for righteousness, it's not about moral superiority. It's about longing for wholeness in a broken world. You're starving to see wrongs made right, not just globally, but in your own tangled heart. Historians still argue whether Jesus meant personal holiness here, or if he was casting a wider net, challenging listeners to long for societal justice under Rome's boot. The answer? Maybe both. Jesus had a way of saying one thing that meant everything at once. You glance around the crowd. Some eyes are lit with fire. Others are damp with frustration. Because this hunger, it hurts. It's a holy discontent. You feel it when you see someone treated unfairly, and your blood simmers. You feel it when your own actions fall short, and you whisper, "I want to be better." You feel it when you scroll and scroll and scroll, looking for something that actually matters, and feel emptier the more you consume. And yet Jesus says you're blessed in that hunger, not because you're satisfied, but because you're starving. Fringe trivia time. In some ancient fasting rituals, people would eat nothing for days, not as punishment, but to sharpen spiritual sensitivity. One 3rd-century Christian hermit even claimed that extreme hunger gave him prophetic visions. Unverified, obviously, but the idea is ancient. Hunger makes you aware of need, of absence, of longing. And Jesus leans into that ache. He promises filling, but not through achievement, not by earning it, simply by wanting it, deeply, desperately. And here's the part you don't want to hear. This righteousness, it doesn't come fast. It's not Amazon Prime. It's not click and receive. Sometimes you hunger for it for years. Sometimes you thirst through entire seasons where everything seems unfair and twisted, and you wonder if this beatitude was just poetic fluff. But then, out of nowhere, something breaks through. A reconciliation you never expected, a moment of clarity in your foggy soul, a sudden peace that makes no sense. It's not flashy, it's not loud, it just is, and it fills something you didn't even know was empty. So tonight, you, sitting there with that ache you haven't been able to name, that craving for something pure, something better, something more aligned with how things should be, you are exactly the kind of hungry Jesus blessed. Not because you have it all figured out, but because you haven't stopped wanting it, and he promises you will be filled. Maybe not today, maybe not how you expect, but the ache is the beginning of the feast. Number 5, mercy, when it makes no sense. You're not sure how much more of this your heart can take, honestly. Mourning, hunger, meekness. This hillside is starting to feel like a therapy session you didn't sign up for. And just when you think maybe the next blessing will offer some lightness, Jesus says, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy." Mercy. Ooh, you shift uncomfortably. Mercy sounds sweet on a greeting card, but in real life, mercy means letting someone off the hook who absolutely deserves to hang there. It means releasing a grudge that you've been carefully aging like fine wine. It means you don't get the satisfaction of a mic drop moment. Here's the thing. Mercy only exists when it's unfair. If someone deserves your kindness, it's not mercy, it's courtesy. But when they've wronged you, forgotten you, betrayed you, that's when mercy walks in like a ridiculous saint and asks you to choose compassion over justice. The Greek word used here is eleemon, and it implies more than just feeling sorry for someone. It's active. It's inconvenient. It gets its hands dirty. You don't get to be merciful from a distance. You have to step into the mess, usually when you least want to. Historians still argue whether Jesus was taking aim at the religious elite with this one. The Pharisees, for example, were all about law and justice. Follow the rules and you're good. But mercy? That was unpredictable. You couldn't chart it. You couldn't regulate it. It was scandalous. And scandalous mercy was Jesus' gem. Remember the woman caught in adultery? The religious leaders were ready to throw stones. And Jesus? He drew in the dirt and whispered, "Let the one without sin cast the first stone." That's mercy. Cool, calm, confrontational. Here's a quirky historical tidbit for your night brain to chew on. In medieval monasteries, there was a position called the porter, a monk whose job was to answer the door. He was instructed to treat every visitor as if they were Christ himself, even if they were dirty, drunk, or dangerous. Imagine being that guy. You hear a knock, and instead of rolling your eyes, you brace for the divine in disguise. And mercy is disguise. It's disguised strength. It's the power to retaliate, withheld. It's the right to judge, surrendered. It's someone wronging you on a Tuesday, and you making them soup on Wednesday. But here's the catch. You're only truly blessed when it costs you something. When mercy feels like a loss. When your pride screams in protest. That's when it counts. And Jesus flips the logic. If you give mercy, you receive it. Not from the person who hurt you. Don't count on that. But from life. From the divine. From somewhere beyond you. You may not see it immediately. You might forgive someone and never get thanked. You might show grace and get mocked for it. But something inside you changes. Your grip loosens. Your bitterness softens. And suddenly, there's room inside you again for peace, for breath, for joy that isn't clenched behind your teeth. You know what mercy really is? It's refusing to let someone else's cruelty shape your soul. It's saying, you don't get to decide who I become. Mercy is rebellion. Quiet, fierce rebellion against the cycle of harm. So tonight you, with that person who never apologized, you, who's been nursing resentment like a hot cup of tea for far too long, you are invited to set it down. Mercy isn't letting them win. It's letting yourself be free. And the strangest thing, that mercy you give away, it always finds its way back. Number 6, pure in heart, gets creepy deep. You can feel the weight of each beatitude stacking on your shoulders like layered blankets, some warm, some suffocating. You're hoping this next one gives you a breather, a gentle pause. But Jesus, with that unflinching gaze, now says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." You blink. See God? That escalated fast. At first, this one sounds deceptively simple. Be pure. See God. Like some spiritual vending machine. Insert holiness. Receive divine vision. But then the questions come creeping in. What does it even mean to be pure in heart? Is this about innocence? Virginity? Never lying or swearing? You brace yourself for the uncomfortable truth. Being pure in heart has nothing to do with playing it safe or keeping your browser history squeaky clean. The word Jesus uses here is katharos, which means clean, yes, but more specifically, undivided. It's the same word used to describe wheat, sifted from chaff, gold refined by fire, a glass of water untainted by mud. To be pure in heart is to want one thing. It's spiritual single-mindedness, total clarity of desire. A heart that doesn't chase 15 idols and a divine high score. You want God, not God plus status, comfort, or secret revenge fantasies. Just God. Historians still argue whether Jesus was channeling Psalm 24 here. Who may ascend the hill of the Lord? the one with clean hands and a pure heart. Some believe this beatitude was a dig at the temple elite, those obsessed with outward ritual but inwardly polluted. Others think Jesus was aiming at his own disciples, warning them, "Don't follow me with a fractured heart." And here's the creepy, deep part. Purity of heart isn't about perfection. It's about exposure. You don't become pure by scrubbing harder. You become pure by letting everything in you rise to the surface. Your fears, your desires, your secrets, and offering it up, not hiding it, not fixing it, just handing it over. It's terrifying, because when your heart is undivided, there's nowhere to hide. You can't play pretend. You can't spin a narrative or pose for your own spiritual selfie. You stand emotionally naked before the divine, and shockingly, that's where seeing begins. Fun fringe fact. Some ancient mystics believed that only when the mind and heart were unified could a person glimpse heaven, not after death, but here, in this life. They'd practice staring into candle flames for hours, hoping for divine clarity. Others fasted from sleep for days, chasing visions through exhaustion. You don't need to go that far, but the hunger behind it, that's the real stuff. And you've tasted it, haven't you? Those moments when you're finally honest, when you stop bargaining with God, when you admit the thing you swore you'd never say aloud, and somehow instead of judgment you feel seen. That's purity. That's clarity. That's the fog lifting. And what's the reward? Not success. Not applause. Not even answers. The pure in heart see God. Not hear about. Not imagine. See. You don't just see him in visions. You start seeing him in the mundane. In your kids' laughter. In the way light hits the dishes in the sink. In the quiet peace that shows up out of nowhere. The world doesn't become less messy, but your eyes do. You stop flinching. You start recognizing. So tonight, you with the cluttered inner world, the mixed motives, the buried shame, you're not excluded. You're invited to begin the sifting, to unclench, to stop hiding from your own heart. Let it rise. Let it sting. Let it clear. Because clarity isn't found in perfection. It's found in surrender. And through that surrender, you just might start to see. Number 7. Peacemakers, not peacekeepers. The night is thicker now. The stars are sharp against a black sky, and the air cools around your skin. You think you're ready for whatever comes next, until Jesus cracks open the 7th Beatitude, like a holy paradox grenade. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Peacemakers, not peacekeepers, and your gut knows there's a big, dangerous difference. Peacekeeping is what you do when you don't want to ruffle feathers. You smile through the tension, avoid the hard topics, keep the family dinners calm by bottling everything up like a human pressure cooker. That's not what this is. A peacemaker walks straight into the chaos. A peacemaker chooses the middle of the argument on purpose, not to take sides, but to build a bridge where there are only broken planks and burnt rope. And that's the kicker. Making peace makes enemies. People don't like their rage interrupted. They don't want reconciliation. They want a good fight, and preferably a win. And you're ruining the script by suggesting both sides sit down and talk. The Greek word Jesus uses is erenopoioi, and it's used nowhere else in the New Testament. It's rare, like a forged coin. It implies actively constructing peace, not waiting for it to magically fall from the sky. You don't just wish for calm, you build it. You hammer it together from apology, vulnerability, truth, and risk. Historians still argue whether Jesus meant peace on a personal level, restoring broken friendships, or on a national level, perhaps challenging his followers to reject the violent revolts brewing against Roman rule. Either way, this wasn't passive. This was political, subversive, potentially lethal. And you feel that, don't you? The weight of it, It's one thing to light a candle for world peace. It's another to call your estranged sibling after 5 years and say, "Can we talk?" It's one thing to repost an anti-war graphic. It's another to step into the fray when two people you love are tearing each other apart and say, "Enough, sit, let's figure this out." Fringe moment for you. In the early church, some believers were excommunicated for trying too hard to reconcile heretical sects. Seriously, they were branded dividers for trying to unite everyone. It's ironic, but that's how threatening peace can be. It unnerves people who are invested in conflict. And yet, Jesus says these people, these relentless bridge builders, these truth-tellers with bandaged hands, are called children of God. Not because they're perfect, but because they're acting like their Father. God, who wades into human mess again and again, not to win an argument, but to restore connection. So what does that mean for you? It means you're not blessed when you avoid the hard conversation. You're blessed when you enter it with soft eyes and steady hands. It means you're not blessed for silencing your opinions to keep the peace, but for speaking hard truths in love, even when your voice shakes. And it means that sometimes peace comes through tension, through confronting injustice, through refusing to pretend everything's fine when it isn't. Peace is forged, not found, and forging, it involves fire. So tonight, you with that unresolved relationship, that coworker conflict, that buried resentment, don't be a peacekeeper, be a peacemaker. It'll be harder. It might get ugly before it gets better. But in the making, you'll discover that you're not just building peace. You're building identity. You're echoing your source. You're stepping into the role of a child who bears their divine parent's face. And when you do, just watch. Even in the chaos, people will start to say, "There, that one, that's what God looks like." Number 8, persecuted. Wait, that's a blessing? You sit a little straighter now. Maybe because something inside you is shifting. Each beatitude has chipped away at you, smoothed an edge, cracked open a thought you didn't even know was buried. And just as the quiet hum of understanding settles in, Jesus tosses the final stone into your calm. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Wait. Persecuted. You blink, heart thudding. You were hoping for something cozy to close out the list. Maybe something about peace again, or joy, or fluffy clouds. But no, he ends on persecution. And not just in passing. He circles back. This is the only beatitude with a double blessing, a repeated promise. You swallow. Persecution isn't abstract. It's not metaphor. It's when people actually hate you because you stood for something true. When they gossip, when they exclude you, when your kindness is mocked as weakness, when your integrity makes others squirm, and instead of rising to meet it, they try to shut it down. It's when righteousness, remember that hunger you had earlier, cost you something. And here's the strange promise. You're not cursed. You're not forgotten. You're blessed. Historians still argue whether Jesus was preparing his disciples for literal martyrdom, stonings, floggings, exile, or if he also meant the quiet daily betrayals that come with being different in a culture allergic to discomfort. Probably both. Because persecution has many forms. You don't need to be arrested to feel it. Sometimes it's the silence after you speak up. Sometimes it's the job offer that never comes. Sometimes it's the strained smile in a family photo where you know you're the odd one out. Fringe fact: in some early Christian sects, people actually sought out persecution. They believed dying for their faith was the fastest way to heaven. There were entire handbooks about how to behave when tortured. One even advised to sing hymns between lashes. That's either deeply courageous or deeply unhinged, maybe both. But Jesus doesn't ask you to chase persecution. He doesn't glorify pain. He just names it and redeems it. You're not blessed because suffering is noble. You're blessed because when you suffer for righteousness, not for being difficult, not for picking fights, but for standing in truth, your suffering aligns you with something eternal, with heaven itself. It's the full circle. The first Beatitude said theirs is the kingdom of heaven, and now the last does too. Like bookends, poverty of spirit and persecution. Two conditions where you've been emptied, and in both, heaven opens. And you remember something, maybe faintly, that time you told the truth when it would have been easier to lie. That season you stood alone in what you believed, heart racing, knowing you'd pay for it. That moment you forgave without applause, and no one saw, but it still mattered. Those weren't failures. They were kingdom moments. So tonight, you with the bruises no one sees, the words you've had to swallow, the decisions that cost you friendships or sleep, you are not invisible. You are not foolish. You are not naive. You are blessed. Not because it feels good, but because it is good. And heaven, it's yours. Still, always. You made it. Through the fire and poetry, through paradox and discomfort, through the strange, quiet beauty of being told that the messy, mournful, hungry, peacemaking parts of you are blessed. You breathe slowly now, as if your spirit has been walking uphill for miles and finally reached a place to rest. The Beatitudes don't shout. They don't demand. They whisper. You listen to that whisper as it settles like dust on your skin. You see yourself not as a failure, but as a seeker. Not perfect, not polished, but real. You've mourned. You've hungered. You've forgiven when it felt impossible. You've sat still when you wanted to strike. You've hoped. You've let go. You've loved anyway. And maybe in this quiet moment you realize that the Beatitudes aren't rules or riddles. They're mirrors. Each one shows you a different face of yourself, one you might have overlooked or buried. And behind each reflection, a gentle voice saying, "You're exactly where you're meant to be." So you exhale. Let the words echo one last time in your chest, not as commands but as invitations. To be poor in spirit, to mourn what matters, to move gently through power, to hunger for what's right, to show mercy, even when it costs, to seek clarity, even when it's painful, to make peace, not just keep it, to stand strong, even when it hurts. Let them wrap around you now, soft, gentle, true. Sleep, child of the Beatitudes.